You don't repeat bad choices because you're stupid. You repeat them because a part of you is secretly addicted to the pain they create. You already know the choices you keep repeating are bad for you. You feel it in your stomach every time you go back to the same person, the same habit, the same distraction, the same version of yourself you swore you were done with. Yet when the moment comes, you slide right back as if something inside you is pulling the strings. And here's the part you don't like admitting, that feeling of déjà vu isn't an accident. It's the echo of an internal pattern you've been rehearsing for years. You're not making the same choices, you're reenacting the same emotional script. The script that says, this is who you are, this is how you cope, this is what you deserve. And even if you consciously reject it, your body responds before your logic does. There's a moment of silence right before you repeat the mistake. And in that silence, your mind whispers, maybe this time will feel different. But it never does. Because nothing changes when you don't. The truth is, you're not choosing the bad option. You're choosing the familiar one. Familiar feels safe, even if it slowly destroys you. That's the psychological trap no one warns you about. Your nervous system would rather experience predictable pain than unpredictable possibility. And every time you repeat the pattern gets stronger. You start convincing yourself it's fate, or weakness, or lack of willpower. But listen closely. This is the pattern interrupt you need right now. You're not stuck. You're comfortable. That's the real problem. Comfort is never innocent. Comfort keeps you loyal to the behaviors that shrink your life. You can feel it shrinking, can't you? Your self-respect, your standards, your potential, all quietly eroding every time you choose the path you already know leads nowhere. And in the back of your mind, you ask yourself, why do I keep doing this? What's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you, but something is unexamined. And until you face what that is, you will continue waking up inside the same cycle, confused about a problem that is not confusion, it's avoidance. You don't repeat bad choices because you're stupid. You repeat them because a part of you is secretly addicted to the pain they create. There's a reason you keep circling the same mistakes. Your emotional history is driving more of your decisions than your rational mind ever will. You think you're choosing based on the moment, but your mind is actually scanning old memories, old wounds, old identities, and saying, what have we done before that felt predictable? And suddenly, you feel pulled into the exact choice you promised yourself you'd never make again. This is why you can watch your own choices unfolding like a movie you've already seen, thinking, why am I doing this again? But you keep going anyway, because deep down, there's a familiar, emotional payoff hidden inside the mistake. Maybe validation, maybe distraction, maybe the temporary relief of not having to confront yourself. The same bad choice becomes a shortcut to escape the discomfort of growth. Growth requires uncertainty, and uncertainty feels unsafe, even if it's good for you. So you cling to what you know. You cling to the predictable pain because predictability feels like control. But here's the raw truth you avoid. You repeat what hasn't been healed. You're not choosing bad habits, bad relationships, bad decisions. You're choosing unhealed versions of yourself. And every time you repeat the pattern, that wounded version of you gets more authority. You become emotionally loyal to the very behaviors that betray you. And the worst part is, you rationalize it. You tell yourself, it's not that bad, or I'll handle the consequences later, or I don't have the energy to change right now. But that's a lie you've rehearsed so well, it feels like truth. The cost isn't just emotional, it's structural. Every repeated mistake rewires your identity. It tells your brain, this is who we are, this is what we do. And eventually, you stop questioning it. You stop challenging it. You start living by default instead of intention. But somewhere inside you, there's still a voice that whispers, you're meant for more than this cycle. You ignore that voice because it threatens the comfort of repetition. But you also fear it because it exposes a truth you don't want to face. If you have the power to break the cycle, then you're responsible for the cycle. And responsibility is far more terrifying than failure. The hardest part to swallow is that your repeated mistakes aren't accidents. They're evidence of an internal contract you never consciously signed. The contract says, I will continue choosing what hurts me as long as it protects me from facing what scares me. Think about that. You don't return to the same toxic person because they've changed. You return because being alone forces you to confront the truth of your own emptiness. You don't keep procrastinating because you're lazy. You procrastinate because finishing something forces you to face your own potential, and potential carries the risk of failure. You don't keep numbing with habits you hate because you enjoy them. You numb yourself because clarity would demand action, and action requires discomfort. So you repeat the mistake, not because you want the outcome, but because you want the avoidance. Every repeated choice is a negotiation with fear. But fear doesn't feel like fear. It feels like logic. It feels like, not now, I'm tired, I'll try again tomorrow, it's not worth the fight. Things will change naturally. These are not reasons. These are defense mechanisms disguised as reasoning. And here's the knife-edge truth you avoid touching. You're not addicted to the bad choice. You're addicted to the emotional protection it provides. Because if you were genuinely ready to change, you would. Not perfectly, not instantly, but decisively. The real battle is not between you and the world. It's between you and the identity that's terrified of becoming someone new. That identity whispers things to you in the dark. You've always been like this. You always will be. Don't embarrass yourself by trying to change. You'll just fail again. And you believe it because it sounds familiar. Not true. Familiar. The mind confuses repetition with truth. And every time you trust that voice, you reinforce the version of yourself you're trying to escape. The cost? Time you cannot get back, confidence that slowly drains, opportunities that vanish before you notice them, a future that quietly collapses into a smaller and smaller shape. When you repeat the same choices, your life doesn't stay the same, it shrinks. The worst part about repeating bad choices is not the mistake itself. It's the slow erosion of your self-trust. Every time you break a promise to yourself, something inside you cracks just a little bit. At first, you barely notice it. You just feel slightly disappointed, slightly ashamed, slightly numb. But over time, that crack widens until you look at yourself and think, maybe I'm just not capable of more. And that thought is dangerous because once you stop trusting yourself, you stop expecting anything from yourself. You become a passenger in your own life. You wait for change instead of creating it. You tolerate what hurts because you assume you can't do better. And you start living in survival mode, not because life is hard, but because you've convinced yourself you can't handle anything else. This is where the cycle becomes self-fulfilling. The moment you believe you're the type of person who always messes up, you unconsciously behave in ways that make the belief real. You begin anticipating failure. You sabotage your own progress. You avoid decisions that could move you forward because progress feels unfamiliar and unfamiliar feels dangerous. So you fall back into the same pattern, the same choice, the same outcome, and then you punish yourself for it. You call yourself weak, irresponsible, inconsistent. But you're wrong. You're not weak. You're conditioned. Conditioned by years of internalizing disappointment. Conditioned by an identity built on survival instead of possibility. Conditioned by the belief that the safest path is the predictable one, even when that path destroys your potential. So here's the pattern, interrupt you need to hear right now. Your life is not stuck, it's repeating. And repetition is not fate. Repetition is an unconscious choice. A choice you make automatically because you haven't yet confronted the parts of yourself that benefit from staying the same. Yes, benefit. Don't look away. If there was no benefit, no psychological reward, no emotional payoff, you would have stopped long ago. Your job isn't to judge yourself for repeating the cycle. Your job is to expose the benefit that keeps you loyal to it. Once you begin to see the hidden benefits of your repeated mistakes, the illusion breaks. You realize you weren't trapped, you were protected. Protected from intimacy, protected from failure, protected from responsibility, protected from growth. And suddenly the question shifts from, why do I keep doing this, to what fear am I avoiding by doing this? That's where the real work begins. Because when the protective layer starts peeling off, it exposes something you've been running from for years. The truth of who you are without your patterns. And that truth feels terrifying. Without the usual habits to hide behind, you have to confront your own loneliness, your own insecurities, your own unfulfilled potential, your own unfinished story. You see yourself clearly, maybe for the first time, and you realize you've been choosing the same mistakes, not because they were easier, but because they kept you from confronting the version of you that actually wants more. This is the identity conflict that locks you in place. One part of you wants change. The other part fears the responsibility that comes with it. So the mind chooses the familiar pain rather than the unfamiliar possibility. But here's the truth that breaks the cycle. You cannot heal in the same identity that created the damage. If you keep acting like the person you've always been, you will keep getting the life you've always had. Change doesn't start with habits. It starts with identity rupture, an internal decision that says, I'm done being the person who does this. Not later, not eventually. Now. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable. It will feel unsafe. It will feel like losing a part of yourself. But that part of you is the version that kept your life small. You don't need to destroy it. You just need to stop obeying it. The moment you stop obeying it, the cycle breaks. Not dramatically, not instantly, but undeniably. And for the first time, you begin seeing a version of yourself that isn't defined by repetition, but by intention. Now comes the part most people avoid. The moment when you realize this entire cycle, every repeated mistake, every familiar disappointment, every quiet regret, was never about weakness. It was about refusal. A refusal to step into the version of yourself that demands more. Because that version isn't comforting. It doesn't let you hide. It doesn't let you repeat old patterns without consequences. It doesn't let you lie to yourself. That version of you forces responsibility, not excuses. And responsibility is uncomfortable because it removes the one thing the cycle gave you, the ability to blame something other than yourself. But here's the deepest truth in this entire script. The moment you take responsibility, the cycle loses its power. Not because responsibility feels empowering, but because responsibility removes the emotional payoff of the mistake. There's no comfort in it, no protection, no illusion, just truth, and truth breaks patterns. So here's your final discomfort, the psychological challenge you've been avoiding. Identify the exact bad choice you keep repeating, and for the next 72 hours, deny yourself the comfort of making it again. Not replace it, not negotiate with it, not plan for later. Deny it. Sit with the discomfort it was protecting you from. Let the silence expose the fears you've been hiding behind the pattern. Let the clarity show you the identity you've been defending. And watch what happens. If you do this honestly, even once, you will feel the cycle crack. Not because the mistake disappears, but because you finally see it for what it is. Not an enemy, not a weakness, but a mirror. A mirror reflecting the parts of you that are terrified of becoming who you're capable of being. Stand in front of that mirror without looking away, and the cycle will not survive.